Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to the Eddie Network podcast. My friend today, who is our guest, is Joey Robert Parks, and I'm glad to have you here. We've talked before, so it's we're friends, and he's an interesting guy, and I'm somewhat envious of what he can do. So, what is it that you do, Joey?
What is it that I can do? I can do a lot. I've decided in my career to focus on writing. So I'm an author and an art director and a ghostwriter. I've ghostwritten 29 books for innovators and entrepreneurs. Last one was for an FBI agent, retired FBI agent, who was the former head of cybersecurity and advisor to the Pope and the national spokesperson. So I wrote his memoir, which, having said all that stuff, is actually a humorous memoir about the very funny things that he had done and said. He's sort of the straight man, between the kind of the Laurel and Hardy or whatever the jokes are. And he's the straight man. It's very, very funny, but doesn't laugh at his own jokes, nothing like that. Anyway, so I wrote his memoir. That was the last book I had ghostwritten, and came out in 2021. But I'm shifting. I'm shifting from ghostwriting, not giving it up, but not aggressively pursuing ghostwriting as much. I'm really interested in my own work, nonfiction and fiction. So I'm writing a short story every couple of months and publishing it on Kindle, working on a nonfiction book about entrepreneurs, and writing a virtual novel for a Chinese gaming company. So that's the main projects I got going on.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And what was it that led you to want to write short stories?
Well, even the word short. So a ghostwriting project is everyone asks how long would this take? I'm like, well, if it was just me writing it and I had all of the information already researched, it would take about 6 to 8 months. It always takes a year because you're busy and you've got a bunch going on, and here's a first draft and it takes a month for you to read it. It takes about a year. So I got COVID during COVID, during like the height of COVID and like December, November 2020. And I got really sick. And then I had long COVID after that for another 6 months. And one of the things, you think about life and da 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 da. And I thought 29 books is a lot. That's 20 years of ghostwriting. How do I want to do the life after this, assuming I get through this, right? And I want to write fiction, mostly fiction, but also nonfiction. So short stories came about because I have so many ideas. And I probably, just like a lot of writers, maybe I will be on my deathbed someday and have 10 stories that I'm not done writing or haven't even started. Even so, I have 15 story ideas and I don't have time to write them all as novels. So I thought, let's write them as short stories initially, as essentially the first 50 pages of each novel, and I'll put them out, partly to get them out of my psyche, get them out there, partly to find out how well they do as a short story, to see if there's any more interest, uh, to have more. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's over. I want more of this. Well, I have more because it's a whole novel, which I could do as a novel. So short stories, because they're short, they take a month or two to write.
So you've written one and you're working on the second one.
The first one was crazy. I put it out. It's got put it out at the end of September, and we're now in November, whatever, 8. 7 5-star reviews, great reviews. I mean, it's gonna just so let's do another one. So that one was called The Shallow Poet, about a poet in 1929 who's really good with words and poetry. He writes poetry based on nature, inspires him, and he talks about anything that's not tangible, love, peace, joy, hardships, whatever, but nothing tangible. One day his editor suggests he write something about something tangible, and he thought, how about a woman? I'll write about a woman. He's got all kinds of women fans, and he's very good with words, and he decides to do that, and things don't go as well as he thought they would, and he learns that he doesn't know anything about women. And so that's gotten really great reviews. Now I'm writing a cosmic horror. Cosmic horror is a combination of feeling like you're tiny in this huge universe of unknowns. Sometimes it has to do with the malevolent forces in the world beyond us, but it always has a lot to do with yeah, just whether you're small or whether just the unknowns. That story is called Glimpse. It's about a woman named Mia who's about 28, and she begins to get glimpses of objective reality, which we can't have in our brains. Everything is interpreted through our brain. So what would that look like if you had a glimpse? And I think people do have glimpses of what that objective reality looks like or feels like. Um, I had a vision once. I would call it a vision. It was not a dream. I could never explain it. I saw some being in the middle of the night. I was awake, and they were about 20 feet away. Easy. They're 15, 20 feet away. And at the same time, 3 feet away. But they did not move. They were in the same, they were not, it was not one person like in two different places. It was like one person in one place, but to me, it looked like close and far at the same time. And it's like a dimension above ours. So things like that. But that story is really fascinating. The woman is struggling with her best friend who's just found out she's moving away. And so she's struggling inwardly with her emotions of losing her best, kind of losing, moving. Her friend's moving out of the country. So it's just difficult. They're very, very close. And then also dealing with these things on the outside. So there's an external and an internal. And so it's 50 pages, and it's I know the beginning, I know the middle, and it's the rare time where I don't know how it ends. So I'm working on that.
And so I have several questions in mind, and which one is the first one? I'm not sure. But let me ask you this: when you have an idea, what do you do with that first?
Pretty often, the initial idea is about a sentence long. I write down, right? Usually it's about a sentence long. Glimpse came out of something like what I described. What other kind of things are there? The question, like, what other kind of things are there that feel that are very, very difficult to describe? I'm very good as a writer and have been since childhood. I've been very, very good at describing things that are difficult to describe. A lot of my ghostwriting projects are very complex and multi-layered, and I make things easy to understand the first time through, right? These big complex topics. So the idea of writing a short story, a fiction story about something that is extraordinarily difficult to describe, so difficult that we just don't have words for it, you know, something that's close and far at the same time, but they're not, and it's not two different people, and it's another dimension. How do you get a grip on that? So what if we had several things like that? I mean,
are you
yeah,
saying that
that's
there has to be some kind of conflict that initiates the story?
Yeah.
And the conflict may be, say, between two people, or the conflict may be in some kind of perception within our minds.
My stories almost always, I think virtually always, start with some sort of conflict internally, some internal conflict I have, whether it's perception or some struggle with myself or who knows what, but something internally. And then I write that down. I come up as fast as I can with a working title. It's not the real title, but something that kind of describes what it is. Then I ask myself, does this feel like this? What's the ideal first form of this thing? Should it be a short story? Should I make a screenplay? Should this be a virtual novel? Should this be a poem? Should I just tell somebody in person, have a conversation, but not turn it into a book? So I think about that for a while. But it starts internal, and then I start to research it, right? I just R&D. R&D is a combination of studying the points of that question that I'm curious about, and then also really looking for external manifestations of that as a character. So Mia, I spent 3 or 4 hours figuring out what her name was, and it needed to be important to me and important to the meaning and all of that. And it starts to open itself up. on its own.
So what is the meaning of Mia?
Well, the meaning of, yeah, what is the meaning of Mia? How did I get there? Originally, I started with ChatGPT. I said, look, I know that she's half Asian, let's say Chinese. I like that she has a sort of a Zen quality to her. Wait a minute, what's the Chinese word for Zen? I looked that up. It's Chan, C-H-A-N. So I told ChatGPT, here's a word, Chan, this woman's name, Chinese, but it's not a typical name, but she's half part American also. So give me some names for an American woman who is half Chinese, but has an American name that also sounds kind of Chinese. And here's a word I've got now, and I got a bunch of lists. And eventually I saw Mia in there. I was like, oh my gosh, Mia is perfect. It does sound Asian, but it's also a common American name, or a fairly common American name. And that's just eventually how I arrived at that. But even the half this, half that, half Asian, half American, a name that sounds like both, that could go either way. That starts to lend a lot to what the story as a whole would feel like. Half the story is inside, half the story is outside, all those double entendres kind of running through the whole story. That's how they end up. And then the ending, I usually know the ending. Where I know when, at the very least, I know when the reader puts the last page down, what do I want them to feel and what do I want them to do? I want some sort of action from them having just read this book, this story. Oh my gosh, I'm going to write a review, right? Or I have to tell someone about this. Or I want to read it again immediately because I learned a bunch of stuff that changes my perspective and I want to go back to the beginning. So I have some ending in mind like that of some of those things. This one I didn't until I'm getting a lot closer. The thing about the internal stuff and then coming up with the external stuff and her best friend moving away and that causes internal struggles. That was just yesterday. I thought, oh, there's an internal and an external. She begins to glimpse things that we see all the time. Well, sorry. Yes, we do. Colors don't exist in real life. They exist out in our brain only. Colors, they're just light waves. So I was asking the question, in the research, if you could see, of course, it's ironic because they're eyes, but if you could see the world outside of our brain, would we see darkness? Would we see pure light? What would we see? And ChatGPT came up with the best answer. It said, it gave me an answer. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Give it to me in a way that a human could understand what that means. And it said, it's like asking your elbow, tell me what this room looks like. So because it originally said you wouldn't see anything. That's what ChatGPT said. I said, would you see colors? No, you wouldn't see anything. Well, that doesn't make sense. What's not anything? Well, ask your elbow, what does this room look like? That's, it's not a real answer. It's not the answer I want.
Right.
But I love the feeling I get from that answer. That's what I want the story to leave the reader with.
There's some serious ambiguity with that answer.
It's ambiguous, but it's also true, but it's also, I don't like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. So when you write these short stories, I think you mentioned it at the beginning that you're wondering if these stories can lead to a novelization of that story.
Right. Yes.
And is that the response from the public that tells you that? Or is it when you finish, you think you see where there's another set of stories or story lines that that can be applied to this that takes you further down the road?
I have 15 right now. I have 15 stories, not outlined, but just like a paragraph each, where it's sort of a beginning, middle, and end. And this is what the story is about. And I feel, without even writing them, that each of them could be a novel on their own. I can dig and expand, and I can do that. Do I have a lifetime that allows me to write these 15 books, right? And assuming I'm not going to create more new stories. So I got frustrated and was like, well, let's create short story versions of all these books, ideas, essentially write the first 50 pages of the story. and end it, give it a satisfying ending, but enough that says, wow, there could definitely be some more here for sure. So to answer your question, I already know that these are full books in me that I could write as a full book. I don't think I'm going to have enough lifetime period to write them all. I want to at least get them out there in some form that people can enjoy. And then based on the response, so like the Shallow Poet came out, it's doing really well. That doesn't mean it was interesting because now that that's out, I thought interesting because now that it's out there, it doesn't mean I want to make a whole book out of it. I could. I knew that. I thought so in the beginning. It's being confirmed by the responses, but I may not want to spend the time it's going to take me to invest in a novel.
So what kind of emotional investment do you have in your characters? I mean, you because if you go to the length of a novel, you better feel like there's these characters have something worth investing your time.
Oh, for sure. Look, I am in every character. I'm not 100% in every character, but there is some aspect of me in every character. Something I don't like, something I do like, some little thing, some perspective, whatever. There's some level of me in every character. Because of that, and the villains too. Even though, in fact, I wrote a short. My whole career got started in 2002 because I had self-published a book, and this woman had said, "Who's your, uh, um, which character are you most like in your book? In this book called Die Reading?" And I said, "The villain," and she said, "Shame on you." And I said, "I know, but there's so much of that character that I relate to more than the hero that he whatever that I relate to." So I think all those characters, if they're in a short story, they're already a full-blooded character.
So let me ask you this. I mean, you've made this comparison of color, and that color is only in the mind.
Right?
Is the characterization of a person as the villain or as evil, is that also simply something that is in the mind?
With for sure. Look, as much as real as a character feels to the reader, conceivably more so to the author, but let's say even it's the same, as real as they feel, the truth is they're a bunch of words on a page. It's not even a tiny fraction of a real person, but it sure does feel like a real person when you read it, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so there's definitely enough. It's really, you're getting a glimpse into all these stories. You're getting a glimpse of a slice of their life, and it just happens to be a short story.
Would it be possible for you to read the first few paragraphs of the Shallow Poet?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Because that
I just happen to have it right here.
I'd love to hear. Yeah. I think we'd all like to hear your words,
Sure.
in particular.
Okay, that's here's the cover. That's what the cover looks like. The Shallow Poet.
Oh, I like that. That's great. The Shallow Poet.
Yeah. So that's what the cover looks like. I had printed out. I just happened to have this here. I had printed out for my mom and dad. They wanted to read it, but they didn't have an Amazon account or Kindle or whatever, all that stuff. So I'd print out a copy, and we don't need 2 copies. You can have an extra one for yourself. I was like, oh, all right, I don't need it, but but now it's just sitting there for sure. Yeah,
parents wonderful.
Yeah, that's great. So I'll read a couple a bit here. Let's see, one more page to turn. I'm trying to turn pages.
All right.
Oh, that's what it was. Oh yeah, I got print on the back. Okay. Matthew Taylor stood amidst brilliant blue cornflowers atop a low English hilltop inside a ring of trees in a small wooded area near the River Cam in Grantchester, England. He lifted one of his leather and canvas high boots from the carpet of grass and watched as the once flat, shoe-shaped patch of green arched its back and rose triumphantly towards the clouds. The pudgy 35-year-old pinched his wool trouser at the knee. Never taking his eyes off the mist-covered grass, he squatted to the ground, perfectly balanced. Were grass to speak of hope, he said, what might you say? Ears strained for insight, eyes widened. Every available sense waited. He'd find solace soon, he knew. No person had ever confided in him like she did. So he held his tongue and waited for her to make an impression in him. He pulled a small red notebook from his rear pocket and thumbed the pages until he found an inked page marked boldly by a word he wanted to know more about: hope. He unclipped a fountain pen from the lapel of his light gray coat and easily, fluidly, as though in a trance, added, strong grass, may be trampled or stepped upon, yet it will rise to survive. For where there is hope, there is strength. Pleased, he came to his feet. A circle of silver birch trees stood intertwined a few yards away. One in particular interested him. Its soft breath rustled in the lively wind. In response, he hurried beside it. Magnificent in stature and grace, its leaves quivered when Matthew looked upon them. The majestic sun cast slender oval shadows across his sunburned face. He opened the notebook and flipped through the pages until he reached a blank sheet without a heading. As the leaves' shadows fell on him, he absorbed the impressions he felt in them. And then he writes, in spite of age or appearance, will a tree reach out its branches? In matters of charity, a man could learn much from a tree. Upon the ink's exposure to air, the freshly birthed word symbols grew in meaning and began to take root in Matthew's understanding. This pleased him. He read the completed poem as a pure observer, but fingers of air flipped and tossed the pages and frustrated his attempts to finish reading the poem. Wind, he said, grant me deeper understanding of your revelations before purging me to pen anew. I love you more than my own kind, but my patience has limits. The breeze stopped. The pages collapsed and lay flat. The poem was now open to his discernment. He silently mouthed the portion that spoke most to him, quote, reach out its branches. He nodded in recognition. He closed his eyes to help him concentrate, inhaled the crisp air, and detected the scent of the sweet, earthy Scots pines nearby. Thank you, my love, he said. I'm ready now. He opened his eyes and looked through the pages until he found his last word for the day: soul. He invited the cool air to speak in his place and penned these words: without the air, there is no wind. Without a soul, there is no man. The ink soaked into the page. About three more. I'll just read three more paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
Good little Ed. He reached into his waistcoat pocket, pulled out a gold watch, and consulted it. 12:30 p.m. I mustn't be tardy, he thought. I ought to make haste back home. He pocketed his pocket watch, tucked the gold chain neatly in behind it, and slid his poetry book into his rear pocket. Minutes later, his heavy frame burst from the rounded cove of trees and followed a well-worn path down the grass-covered hill. When he arrived at the bottom, he stood before a wrought iron gate that surrounded his well-appointed home. For a professor of philosophy and poetry, Matthew was extremely well off. Book royalties from his academically authored books and creative writings was substantial enough to cover the cost of his two-story red brick home near the River Cam. But even given his senior position at the university, colleagues and students suspected it was his substantial savings and or family wealth that accounted for his brand new 1929 red and silver 70 horsepower Benz convertible. Okay, it goes on from there. So that's a good little.
I see that how that can set up all kinds of different situations that are both internal to him and also external to him. And
yeah, oh, that's interesting. You're right. Yeah, the internal, the external, and so I mean, the very first beginning of the very beginning is your promise to the reader. Like you're making them a promise that these characters and the things you're laying out are going to be paid off, and you're setting up that oh, he's great with words and look how fluid he is, and obviously the narrator of the story, right? Whoever's narrating the story is also good with words, in addition to the poet himself. So there's like a double emphasis on how amazing these words are and how they're just the flows, and it's great and it's wonderful. And so when he starts to uh, write poetry about women, he's completely um, he starts talking about their form and shape, and he just gets lost in the external, and his poetry becomes clunky and awkward and emotionally uncertain, and all his insecurities start to come out. So it causes in this case in the story, it's a bit of magical realism, because things in his house that he's handcrafted, a clock, the frame of a mirror that hangs in the hallway, these things start breaking on their own. They just start to fall apart, and it turns out to be connected in some strange way to his poetry that he's writing about these women. So it has a lesson, but it's not the kind of lesson you think at the end.
It's fascinating how you can conceive of this.
Yeah. Yes, I'll just say yes.
I mean, it's obviously a gift, and it's a gift that you've developed. But I'm listening to you read this, and I'm hearing sentences that I could never write, and I write a lot, and I couldn't write like that, and I maybe I could if I spent several years recalibrating how I write. But
yeah, but I mean, thank you for one, and also thank you from wherever it's coming from on the outside. It is a gift, meaning here's a gift. Yeah. I didn't do anything to get it. It just showed up inside of me. For a long time, I really struggled. In fact, I struggled with becoming a writer for a living for a long time, as in I'd say high school, college. I struggled with embracing writing as a career, because I had this feeling that I couldn't do it. I wasn't allowed somehow, because it was so easy. And it wasn't, I didn't have to, it wasn't hard at all. I've never had writer's block. Never, not once. I've never had writer's block. And in class, the teacher would be like diagramming sentences, and I had no idea what they were talking about. In the beginning of class, I'd raise my hand and say, hey, who has the answer to this, whatever the terms are, I don't even know them, right? And I'd say, I think the sentence should say, and I would say what I thought it should say. Doesn't that sound a lot better? It seems like that's the answer. And she's like, can you hold that until the end? I would just intuitively know what felt right, but not knowing why or any terminology. And I still don't know why. I just know it feels right versus it doesn't feel right.
Well, that's really where your talent is.
Yeah, but it took a long time to accept that it's okay. In fact, it's okay. Embrace it. It doesn't matter that it's so easy, and it might be hard for somebody else or whatever. It's just it took a while.
Do you feel like this is an art that you practice?
It is now. It is now. It would have been then too when I first started writing, but it is an art. It is an art. It's absolutely, there's a perspective, and there's the things you can put into words about how something works or how it feels a certain shape. I'm having this visual in my head of, I think of the clay, the spinning clay, the potter that's making clay, and with the water and all that. I think of myself in like grade school or whatever, having the same talent, but not really exercised much, and put my hands on it and have it kind of go all over the place. It's still art. It's just at the level that I'm at. So I've developed the art over time, but there's absolutely some built-in something that I can't explain.
So do you, when I wrote my first book, my agent said, we want this book to be around 55,000 words. Do you look at it from word count? Do you look?
Oh, that's right. Well, so short story, I'm going for 45 to 50 pages. That's about 25,000 words, roughly. It's about a 43-page book, roughly. So 25,000 words. So the only time I really keep track of word count is in the beginning, when I say, how long is this? 25,000 words about. And then after that, I don't keep any. I already know that's about 43 pages. And so given that, I also know I've got a month, 1 to 2 months to finish it. That means also design the cover and get it up on Kindle and all, and do a proofreading and a beta reading and all that other stuff. So it's a pretty fast writing time, actually, the writing part, maybe a month. Word count is other than those kind of end goal. What I don't think about word count. I don't keep track of word count. I'm doing NaNoWriMo right now, that National Novel Writing Month, and I'm participating with a bunch of folks. I'm doing, my goal is two short stories in 1 month. So because it needs to be a substantial thing, that's the novel is 50,000 words. That's what they tell for National Novel Writing Month. They say 50,000 words, and everything's built around word count. You know, all the groups you're in, and what was your goal, and we'll do a 10-minute sprint, and who had the most words. I don't care about words. It's so irrelevant to me. I just know that in 2 months I need to have, a month I need to have all the words there. And so it's weird. I just don't keep track of word count. I do for those things. I say, I lost again. Nope, I lost again. Everybody's getting 500. I'm like 150. But I know on some weekend I'll write 20,000 words,
Well, in the writing, and I do primarily on Substack now. I when I decided to start there, I was going to write longer things than I had been doing before on my blogs, the 2 blogs I have, and my goal was to write 1,500 words.
Yeah,
and then often it creeped up, and some of them were 4,000 words. I think I even produced one that was 6,000 words.
Right.
And, but the goal was coherence, something that was a complete thing.
Right.
And it was interesting, because I found myself writing series of a series on a particular topic, and there are four major series that I wrote over the probably year and a half that I spent most of my time writing. And that was an interesting thing. And after the first year, I had produced over 200,000 words. And
wow.
And I had no idea that I had gone that far.
That you've done that much. Yeah. Oh, that's right. You didn't have any idea how much you've done.
No.
Because you're focused and you're enjoying the process.
And so now, what do I do with 200,000 words?
You can make it into a couple of books or a book. A couple of books, right? That's a couple of books right there. Pull information out if you wanted to, and make a book out of it.
Well, it's 50,000 word books.
Well, 50,000 word book is about 150 pages. If it's sort of a wisdom literature range, which is like that 150, 125 pages kind of thing, 250, 300 pages, that's a little longer for sure. But how long is that one?
56,000 words, and it's 222 pages.
Oh yeah, that's a good length. Yeah.
And
bigger fonts.
So yeah, it's a larger font than.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably a larger font, because usually it's about 350 words on a page on a typical general, average size page, about 350 words.
And I was really pleased with the outcome here. I really, the production quality was excellent. So
yeah, it's a great cover too. I like the cover as well, for sure. Yeah.
We went through several iterations.
Yeah. 1,500 words is a good range.
So do you do your own artwork?
Yeah. So because I'm doing Kindle, that's self-published. And so I do the artwork. I'm very good with Photoshop, and I do use Mid-Journey and other AI generated stuff, and then I tweak it a lot because I for two reasons. One is I need, a human more than a prompt. At the end, I need something that is really crafted.
So here's the last question I want to ask you, and I think it's a really important one. You're the first person that I have met that I know who is actually utilizing AI as a tool in their own creative endeavors. And I'd like you to speak to how you came to utilize that and how you view that in both its potential, but also its limitations.
So I started ChatGPT. I jumped in pretty quick. I guess it came out in November last year, and I think I hopped in probably November, early December. I started using it daily, all the time, dialoguing with it, as if it was a person, right? Being polite, testing its boundaries. I like boundaries, and I like to push on them and find out where they are. And I immediately started pushing on the boundaries to figure out what can I do with it. What kind of things could I conceivably do with it? So I started pushing on boundaries. And
what kind of boundary would that be? What does that look like? What's the boundary?
Well, yeah, one is like just trying to get it to do stuff that it says. If it tells me it won't do something, or it says, I can't tell you how to build a bomb. I didn't ask that question, but ask it something, and it would come back and say, well, first of all, if you use foul language with it, right, it starts to say, like, give you warnings, essentially. Hey, just to let you know, it's whatever. So, okay, it doesn't like swearing. Okay, I'm not a big swearing fiend, but okay, it doesn't like that. If you write about LGBTQ stuff, that's fine, but in certain arenas, it gets a little skittish. It gets a little like, oh, I'm not sure you want to talk about that stuff. And I'm like, wow, I didn't say anything that was, okay, that's interesting. There's some sort of boundary in there. Other topics too. There's just other things like, some boundaries are things like, it's very good if I say, here's something to read. Give me a numbered list summarizing all this stuff in one sentence. If there's dates involved, put those in chronological order. It does that all that stuff really, really well. It can do coding. It can do all kinds of great stuff. But one thing I found pretty soon early on, and I still have not found a way to make it work correctly. It's just, if you say, here's a 500-word piece, double the size of this, right? Using this material to pull from, it won't. It'll give you 600 words. And then I'll come back and I'll say, okay, here's 500 words again. Make it 1,000 words or really close, and da 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 da. And it struggles. It just can't. There's some sort of boundary it's hitting. So I start to push on those sorts of things and play with them. So anyway, I started using it a lot for research. It's great when you're writing. If I'm writing a first draft, right, separate editing from writing. So there's no editing. There's no backing up a sentence. That's editing. So I throw down a bracket. I use a lot of placeholders, but with ChatGPT, I can look it up very quickly in a few seconds and come right back. So I use that a lot. I said to a friend the other day, you know what? I wonder if there's any AI programs where I can put a picture in it and it can tell me what's in the picture. Because that would be great, because I know what I'm good at in writing. Character description and building descriptions, right? Or the room, you come into a room and what does it look like? I'm very good at it when you read it. Behind the scenes, it takes me 10 times as long as somebody else would take to write it. I just really struggle with character description, or what they're wearing, or the clothing, or what things are called. And it's just, I don't really love it. I love to read it. I love to read it when I've written it, but there's a lot of homework. And I thought, man, if I could upload a photograph and then have it tell me what's in it, That'd be amazing. So I hopped online, started looking around, and I found this program, and it's, oh my gosh, wow, I'm going to use it forever now. So I have this Mia, this character in Glimpse. I know what she wears. I know what her style is. It's hard to describe it. So I go online and find some pictures, and I plop this in there, and it spits out a really nicely worded description of exactly what she's wearing. These are knee-high socks. Oh, is that what they call them? Right? This is a whatever purse. Oh, is that what they call it? I didn't know that. It's telling me details that I can absolutely use immediately in the writing. And even it described an architecture thing, and it said, oh, don't fall asleep. It said something about the sheen on the floor reflected the lights from above and gave a warm sort of feeling to the whole room. Oh my gosh, that's brilliant for writing. I can absolutely use that. So I could get there on my own. This is so much faster. I'm still going to tweak it and pull things out and toss things out. There's no difference between that. Like, what's the difference between it giving me a sentence and me either using it verbatim or switching it around or whatever, or me typing and I can't think of the right word. I have a word, but it's not quite right. And then I go to another source like a dictionary or a synonyms, right? That's like, can I not? That's like a piece of AI is just sitting here. I'll offer you a bunch of words you can use that you forgot about right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how is that? It's just a level of percentage, but it's the same thing. So I'm really excited about writing faster, and also, is it better writing faster? But maybe by writing faster, I can do other things. And I'm not sure if it's going to buy me more time to write other things, expand it in other ways. But so I'm using that now extensively. So with that in mind, and then the research for ChatGPT is great. I'm working with a friend who's a programmer, and he's got a group of guys that program with him, and men and women, and we're playing with the idea of creating I would love. I told him I want a web-based app where I can say, here's my PDF, or here's my Word doc, here's my first draft, right? Here's my first draft, consume it, and then let me just sit and ask you questions, right, about it. For example, and also have come up with like beta readers, essentially. Have a list where you could check off, this age, male or female, this job, this sort of background, check, and then tell the AI, pretend that person's reading my story. What would they think about it? What problems might they have? What things might come to mind? What issues do you have? I can also write in this program. I can make editing in it. It would do proofreading, and then it would export a Word doc. And so there's nothing like that. So I've been talking to him about designing a program like that. And so that's exciting. It's research and development, and everybody's doing it, right? Somebody else is possibly doing the same thing. If some point somebody else comes out with it first, then fine, but excited about pursuing that sort of stuff too.
And so the goal is the story.
The goal is the story. And,
yeah.
Oh, the other thing, so this program, I want private access. I don't want ChatGPT where it's used for training purposes and other people might use it. I also don't want any restrictions, none. This is if I'm writing a book. Right. So I imported some stuff in a first draft of an interview, and the person mentioned some stuff, and ChatGPT was, oh, nope, can't do anything with that. I won't look at the end. I won't even look at the whole thing because you mentioned some sentence that it found offensive. This is a non-feeling machine that doesn't have any offenses. I understand that the people behind it might, but I want to have private places where nobody else is going to look at it but you, and it doesn't matter what you write. So
that's really fascinating, and it encourages me to look into that. I'm not sure I have the energy to do that at this point, but because it's enough for me to deal with Grammarly.
And, yeah.
and what I'm, they've added another feature, where they're addressing your sentence structure. And I'm beginning to see myself agreeing with it more and more. And what I don't want to do is streamline it so that it sounds like everybody else.
So Microsoft Word has that too, right? I use Microsoft Word. I use another word a program called Ulysses, which is Mac only, but I use that for writing as well. But on Word, which I use all the time, right? It does grammar, and I turn those on, and I just turned them off recently after playing with it for a long time. It's constantly, are you sure that you want to keep it like this? I'm like, yes, I am sure. Like, stop
Yeah.
checking my grammar and misspelling. I like the spelling, that's good, and the punctuation, but even grammar is just too much. It just is not smart enough to know why I want it there.
Well, it ends up making everybody sound the same.
That's right. Which is ChatGPT, for example. Its voice is everybody, and that's why it's this kind of homogenized sound, all-purpose voice.
The mono voice.
The mono voice. So I use
There's a
AI a lot.
story in there. There's a story in there.
Oh yeah, there is. I want to write a story called Machine Zero. That's one of my ideas for a short novel, a larger thing. When a business gets a virus, the Machine Zero would be the first machine that's infected. And how would you go back and figure out, some sort of
Right.
mystery?
Sounds great. That sounds great.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I congratulate you on your achievement of, because the last time we talked, you were just beginning this short story writing process, and it sounds like
yeah.
it's
I
been
do,
really fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, I did. I was just getting started. I didn't really know. I had some plans, but you don't know how they're going to go. So yeah, it's been really great.
Well, please let us know how to find your stuff, so that
Yeah.
people can
Well,
buy it.
the easy way is my full name onto Amazon. You just type joeyrobertparks.com. Well, that's my website, joeyrobertparks.com. But if you type that into Amazon, the same thing comes up. The books that are out. The FBI book is up on there. The Shallow Poets up on there, and the very first book I ever wrote, Die Reading, 2002. 3 reviews. I think three and a half stars. I didn't know anything about promoting or nothing like that. 2 of the reviews are by Stephen Scott and Christopher Daniel. They left out their last name, which is Parks. So my 2 brothers had written reviews on
Oh, is
there.
that right?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter if you write a book that just kind of doesn't
Yeah.
go anywhere or whatever. It just makes no difference. You see film directors that put out flops and then lose millions of dollars to studios, and it might take 5 years, but they're back in business. You're writing, directing more movies. So
I,
that flop doesn't make any difference. If you don't want it to make any difference.
I forget what the title of the book is. That it's not here. It's at home. But there's a venture capital group in Silicon Valley that has created this method, not the methodology, but this perception of a new business, where they want you to create a category, and if you create a new category of business, or a new category of a product, that what they claim is that you'll gain 8% of those who are interested in the category, and all those people who are going to follow you, they're only going to be fighting over the remaining 20%. So they have written a book about writing books,
Okay.
and what they say, that there are some books that are intended to be big sellers, and they fade really quickly, and all these other books are slow starters, and they build momentum, and they last a long time, because there's something about them that continually attracts people to them.
Right. That's my all-time goal. That's a perfect, succinct. But it's my objective is to write those kinds of books that are slow builders that keep growing and growing and growing over time. Yeah,
And that's exactly what I see myself doing.
that's great.
I sold, when this was published in September of 2018, it sold 41 books on the first day.
Okay.
Not the 1,000 books I was promised.
Right.
41.
41. Yeah.
But now, I think there has been close to 600 copies of the book sold
That's great.
in 5
Yeah.
years, and I bought 15,000 copies of the book.
Okay.
Is it 15,000? No, 1,500 copies. Excuse me, 1,500 copies. And I think of those 1,500, about half of them have found their way into other people's hands, either by being purchased from me directly or me giving them away.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the short story came out, and I've got 7 reviews, all 5 stars, and 6 of those have writing, not just the review. I already know that 50 or 100 people have read it, but not everybody leaves reviews. Some people don't have Amazon accounts, so but I started doing readings. You know, I was asked to do a reading and read my story out loud. And be like, oh my gosh, this is so great! And I kept thinking, oh my gosh, I got to get out a lot more often. I need to be out doing stuff, interacting, going to other book readings, things like that. But for the joy of it, not because I'm going to get in there and sell a bunch of books.
Oh yeah, you can't. That's not a way to sell books.
You can't do that. No, it's so
it is a way to build a following. And
yeah,
that's what it is.
Yeah,
Joey, thanks for being on here. This is really interesting.
Thank you so much.
People, if anyone out there if you see yourself as a writer and that you want to figure out how to do it, he's a guy to follow, because he's figured this out. And I think it's your methodology is really a sound one, and because it is a production game at one level. You got to write, to get it out there. And so that's what I did during the pandemic. I wrote 7 short books in 15 months.
Yeah, just head down, keep going. You're like, I remember somebody asked me at one point, how many books have you written? I said 32, and they said, what? That's a lot. And I thought, yeah, when did that happen? When did I go from 2 or 4 to 32? I was just producing. That's the way you do it.
Well, one thing that is interesting to me is are these mystery writers who are able to write 30 books about the same character.
Yeah, that's incredible, right? Yeah.
So they got something going. So
yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, Joey. I'll see you
You're welcome, Ed. Thanks so much, Ed. Appreciate it.
And thank you all for watching. And if you would subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment if you would. And go find Joey's stuff on Amazon so that you can enjoy reading some really interesting stories.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time here on the Eddie Network podcast. Bye-bye.